Hello, I'm Anastasia, and tonight we're setting aside the noise of the world, the glowing screens, the endless headlines, the spinning thoughts that just won't quit, to drift into something gentler, a quiet tale, a soft unraveling of a modern mystery. This story is not financial advice, just a poetic journey through the strange history of Bitcoin, told to help you relax and fall asleep. Before we begin, I'd love to gently invite you to subscribe to this channel and click the little like button if you enjoy sleep stories like this. It's the easiest way to find your way back to this little sleep sanctuary whenever your mind needs rest. So, dim the lights. Pull the blanket a little closer, let your shoulders soften, and take one slow breath. You've chosen a story that feels impossibly modern, yet at its heart, it's about trust, dreams, and the strange ways humans try to feel safe. This is the soft and curious story of Bitcoin, a coin you can't touch, a currency with no country, an idea that rose from code and nearly took over the world. But don't worry, you don't need to understand it. You just need to lie back and listen. You probably imagine Bitcoin began with wild headlines, day traders and blinking graphs. But it didn't. It began in the hush of a financial collapse. In 2008, the world trembled. Banks fell like dominoes, mortgages crumbled, and the global economy, something we were told was safe and too big to fail, started to crack like thin ice beneath a crowd. Millions lost jobs. People watched their savings vanish into smoke. There were protests, bailouts, confusion, and an entire generation began to whisper a new question. What is money, really? Amid that collapse, in the unglamorous corners of the internet, on cryptography forums and coder message boards, a strange light flickered to life. It wasn't loud. It didn't go viral. It was a paper, a digital one, just 9 pages long, posted under a name no one had seen before and no one has confirmed since. Satoshi Nakamoto. No profile, no face, no country, just code. And the paper, it was simple, almost poetic in its precision. It proposed a way to send money directly from person to person, without a bank, without a middleman, without permission. Just math, just software, just two people and their shared belief. It sounded ridiculous to some, beautiful to others. But to those who had just watched the traditional system collapse, it felt like someone had lit a candle in the ruins. Satoshi called it Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. A cash system without cash, without paper, without governments. Instead of printing money, Bitcoin would be mined, not by shovels, but by solving puzzles. The rules, embedded in the code, the limits, unchangeable, the trust, built not on humans, but on math. No one could cheat it. No one could inflate it. No one could control it. Not fully. To most of the world, this idea floated unnoticed. But in a handful of bedrooms lit by soft screens, something revolutionary began. The dream was now typed, outlined, signed by no one and everyone. But a white paper alone can't change the world. It needed a heartbeat. And so, Satoshi, whoever or whatever they were, began to code, line by line, byte by byte. In the quiet spaces between news headlines and collapsing stock markets, a system was built. Not in a tower, not in a lab, but likely on a regular computer, by someone sipping tea while rain tapped gently against the window. By January 2009, the system was alive. Not a big launch, no fireworks, just a silent message in cyberspace. The first block has been mined. It was called the Genesis block, Block 0, the first stone in the digital path. And tucked inside it, like a secret folded in a letter, was a message. The Times 3rd, January 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It wasn't just a timestamp, it was a whisper of rebellion, a clue to why this had all been built. While governments printed money, while trust dissolved in boardrooms, here was something different, unafraid, unbought, a parallel system, hiding in plain sight. This Genesis block could never be altered. It was eternal, locked in place by the very rules it created. No one could go back and edit the past. And so, like a breath drawn into lungs, Bitcoin began to live. In the early days, there was no price, no ticker, no trading floor. You couldn't buy coffee with it. You couldn't impress a date with it. It was worthless and priceless, a toy for cryptographers, a puzzle for dreamers, a whisper between believers who said, maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild trust from scratch. To get a coin, you had to mine one. You needed a decent computer. You needed patience. You needed to run a program that solved math problems, puzzles designed not to be hard, but fair. Every 10 minutes, a new block would be discovered, and with it, a reward, 50 bitcoins. Back then, they were worth exactly $0, but they sparkled with potential. There were no venture capitalists yet, no TikToks, no crypto bros in Lamborghinis, just message board usernames and idealism. The people who showed up in those first months weren't investors. They were builders, tinkerers, people who liked things that made the world feel a little less broken. They didn't care about profit. They cared about the idea that money could be free again, free from collapse, free from control, free from fear. As the code spread, others joined. They downloaded the software, began mining, and the network, this invisible fabric of trust, started to grow. Not in skyscrapers, but in bedrooms, basements, old laptops under dusty desks. And through it all, Satoshi remained, not as a leader, not as a guru, but as a presence, quiet, constant, deliberate, answering questions, helping others troubleshoot the code, updating the protocol, until one day they simply vanished. The network was growing, quietly, slowly, like frost spreading across glass. And yet, something was still missing. Bitcoin was mined. It was traded, sort of. You could send it, receive it, admire it in your digital wallet, but you couldn't do anything with it. It wasn't money. Not yet. Not until someone tried to spend it. Enter Laszlo, a quiet programmer from Florida, bearded, soft-spoken, the kind of man who understood both machines and appetite. Laszlo had been mining Bitcoin for fun. He believed in it, not because he wanted to get rich, but because he loved puzzles, loved seeing what might happen next. And on May 22nd, 2010, Laszlo got hungry, not metaphorically, literally. He wanted pizza. So he went onto a forum and posted a message that would ripple through history. He wrote, "I'll pay 10,000 bitcoins for a couple of pizzas, maybe 2 large ones, so I have leftovers for the next day." People laughed. People blinked. Some asked, "Are you serious?" Others thought, "That's a lot of Bitcoin." But to Laszlo, it wasn't about the price. It was about proving that this invisible money could buy something real. It took a few hours. And then someone said yes. A teenager named Jeremy saw the post. He didn't have Bitcoin himself, but he figured, why not? So Jeremy picked up the phone, called Papa John's, ordered 2 large pizzas with extra cheese, had them delivered to Laszlo's house. He paid with a regular credit card. And Laszlo, he sent Jeremy 10,000 Bitcoins. In that moment, something quietly shifted in the world. Bitcoin had moved from abstract code to melted cheese and pepperoni, from an idea to a transaction, from theory to dinner. It was the first recorded commercial purchase using Bitcoin, and it wasn't a yacht, not a house, not some luxury, just pizza, hot, greasy, delicious. That night, Laszlo posted a picture, 2 pizzas, steaming in their boxes. He looked satisfied, smiling like a man who had eaten well and made history on the side. Of course, people now look back and gasp. 10,000 Bitcoins, today worth hundreds of millions of dollars, for pizza. But Laszlo, he never regretted it, because he knew without that pizza, Bitcoin might have remained just theory. He'd taken the leap, turned code into crust, turned ones and zeros into something you could slice. And every year since, on May 22nd, the crypto community celebrates it, Bitcoin Pizza Day. A reminder that even revolutions start with small cravings, not for power, not for glory, but for something warm, something real, something you can taste. That's how movements begin sometimes, with cheese and bread and a little bit of belief. By now, Bitcoin had taken its first bite of the real world, a slice of pizza, a taste of possibility. But it wasn't finished. No, it was just waking up. What came next wasn't a boom, but a gentle, persistent hum, like a distant machine that never stopped ticking. Bitcoin had survived its infancy. Now it began to grow, and not like a currency. Not yet. It grew like a question, like a quiet challenge whispered across oceans. What if money didn't belong to banks? What if it didn't need a country? What if value could move between people as easily as an email, without needing anyone's permission? These weren't just technical ideas. They were philosophical ones. They asked something almost unthinkable. Could money exist without borders? Across the world, people were beginning to wonder. A farmer in Nigeria, a student in Seoul, a taxi driver in Buenos Aires, a shop owner in Poland. They weren't mining, they weren't investing, they were listening, and slowly, some of them began to believe. You didn't need a central bank. You didn't need an approval stamp. All you needed was the software and a little bit of trust. But trust in what, exactly? Not in a person, not in a government, not even in Satoshi, who by now had disappeared like smoke from a candle. No, people were trusting the network itself, the code, the math, the idea that this system, run by strangers, owned by no one, could still be honest. At the heart of it was something called the blockchain, a strange word for a simple idea. Imagine a journal. Every 10 minutes, a new page is written, every transaction logged, every coin accounted for. And once a page is filled, It's locked, stamped, and glued to the one before it, an unbreakable chain of truth, open to all, changeable by none, no secrets, no hidden ledgers, no midnight erasures. Just a growing book, written by everyone, owned by no one. And how were these pages written? By miners, not with lanterns and pickaxes, but with computers solving puzzles, each one a digital riddle. The winner? They get to add the next block, and they're rewarded with freshly minted Bitcoin. It was a system that made greed and honesty work together. If you wanted the reward, you had to play by the rules. Cheating didn't work. The network would know. And so the chain grew, page by page, block by block, a living, breathing history of every transaction ever made. No deletions, no do-overs, only transparency. And through that transparency, a strange kind of trust was born. It wasn't cozy, it wasn't emotional, but it was fair. And for many, especially those from countries where money was unstable, that fairness felt revolutionary. Imagine sending money to your cousin across the world without waiting days, without banks taking a slice, without proving who you are to 5 different strangers behind glass windows. Just click, send, done. Bitcoin didn't ask where you were born. It didn't care what you believed. It didn't care who you voted for. If you had a wallet, you were in. And that was both beautiful and dangerous. Because with freedom comes risk. And the more Bitcoin grew, the more eyes turned toward it. Some wide with wonder, some narrowed with suspicion. But for now, it was still young, still idealistic, still a whispered dream that money could be borderless, trustless, fair. And while the world argued, Bitcoin simply kept ticking. Every 10 minutes, a new block, a new breath, a new piece of the chain, the hum of history, soft and invisible, but getting louder by the day. Every new invention, no matter how noble its beginning, eventually meets the shadows. And Bitcoin, pure, idealistic, math-driven Bitcoin, was no exception. You probably imagine Bitcoin as something sleek and shiny, a digital gold coin spinning through cyberspace. But what came next wasn't polished. It was messy, human, unpredictable. Because once something works, people start testing its limits. And so began one of Bitcoin's most controversial chapters in the darkest alley of the internet, a place called Silk Road. Not the ancient trade route. No camels, no spices, no caravans. This Silk Road lived on the dark web, hidden behind layers of encryption, accessible only to those who knew how to look and weren't afraid of what they'd find. Launched in 2011 by a man using the name Dread Pirate Roberts, the Silk Road promised something radical, a marketplace with no oversight, where anything could be bought and paid for with Bitcoin. Drugs, fake passports, hacking tools, even whispers of more dangerous things. Because Bitcoin wasn't just fast and borderless, it was pseudonymous. Not fully anonymous, but close enough for many. To some, this was terrifying. To others, it was freedom. And so Bitcoin, once dreamed up in rebellion against corrupt banks, found itself tangled in a different kind of rebellion. Regulators took notice, fast. By 2013, the FBI had tracked down the creator of the Silk Road, a young man named Ross Ulbricht, hiding behind the alias. He was arrested in a public library, his laptop open, his online empire seized. The Silk Road collapsed. Its treasure, thousands of bitcoins, confiscated by the US government. It made headlines. Bitcoin was dragged into the spotlight, called drug money, hacker cash, anarchist nonsense. Prices plummeted. Investors panicked. Believers held their breath. But that wasn't the only earthquake. Just 1 year later, in 2014, came the collapse of Mt. Gox, then the largest Bitcoin exchange in the world, based in Tokyo, used by thousands, trusted by many, until suddenly, it wasn't. One day, users couldn't withdraw their funds, the site froze, and soon the truth emerged. 850,000 bitcoins had vanished, gone, lost, stolen, hacked, mismanaged. No one was entirely sure. It was catastrophic. People lost fortunes. Some lost hope. Bitcoin, this shining symbol of decentralized trust, had stumbled hard, and the world watched. See, critics said, it was a scam all along, a bubble, a digital mirage. But even then, Bitcoin did not die, because underneath the fear, the code kept running. The blockchain was intact. The network was alive. The heartbeat continued, block by block, every 10 minutes, with or without approval. What emerged from the ashes wasn't just survival, it was evolution. New developers stepped in. Security improved. People began asking harder questions about custody, privacy, governance. And still, more joined. Because for every scandal, there was a quiet story no one reported. A refugee using Bitcoin to send money back home because their local currency had collapsed. An artist selling digital work to buyers across the globe, paid instantly without middlemen. A farmer accessing global markets from a phone more powerful than the rocket computers of 1969. Bitcoin wasn't perfect. It was never meant to be. But even as the world pointed fingers, the network hummed on. Not controlled, not corrupted, just there. And slowly, people began to realize something strange. Bitcoin had become anti-fragile, not in spite of its struggles, but because of them. Every attack, every scandal, every shaky step was absorbed and remembered in the chain. Because in Bitcoin, nothing is erased. Everything is part of the story. Even the stumbles, even the dark alleys, even the missing coins. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. But somewhere, between the scandals and the sleepless coders, between the stolen wallets and the late-night Reddit posts, Bitcoin began to shimmer with something strange, legitimacy. It didn't look like it at first. No one declared it official. There was no ticker tape parade, no bell ringing on Wall Street. But slowly, silently, Bitcoin stopped being a joke and started becoming a phenomenon. Celebrities tweeted, tech giants took notice. A few bold companies began accepting it for payment. A luxury car here, a plane ticket there, even coffee in some places, if you knew where to look. Bitcoin had gone from obscurity to a headline, from hacker circles to cocktail party conversations. There were stories now of the guy who bought it $3 and forgot his password, of the woman who mined 500 coins on a dusty laptop, then lost it in a move. Fortunes made, fortunes missed, regrets, rebounds, roller coasters. And through it all, the price moved like a heartbeat with insomnia, up and down again. But the code, unchanged, steady. And for some, that quiet consistency was what made it feel like gold. Not physical, not shiny, but rare, predictable, uncontrolled. Gold had once been the universal store of value, untouchable, finite, beautiful. Now people were whispering the same about Bitcoin, calling it digital gold, an asset you couldn't touch, but couldn't ignore. Of course, there were critics, many, and some of their warnings were right. Bitcoin was volatile. It consumed energy. It was misunderstood and often misused. But that didn't stop its spread. Countries debated it. Banks feared it, then adopted it, then fought it again. Some nations banned it, others embraced it. One country, El Salvador, even declared it legal tender, a real-world coin for groceries, gas, and morning coffee. It was surreal. This thing made from nothing, this line of code birthed by a ghost, was now on billboards, in boardrooms, in the mouths of presidents. And still, no one knew who created it. Satoshi Nakamoto had never returned, never cashed out, never revealed themselves. Their coins sat untouched, like treasure beneath glass, a reminder that some revolutions don't need a leader, only an idea and a little silence. In a world where everyone wants credit, Satoshi disappeared, and somehow that made the story even stronger. So now, here we are, you, me, lying in a world where Bitcoin exists, a currency with no building, no flag, no CEO, just code running on thousands of machines, kept alive by belief and curiosity, and maybe a little hope. People still argue, they always will. Some say Bitcoin is freedom. Some say it's fiction. Some say it's the future. Others, a footnote. But here's what's undeniable. Bitcoin changed the way we think about money. It made us question what value is, what trust is, who decides, and it reminded us that sometimes the most powerful things in history don't arrive with trumpets and banners. They arrive in quiet code, in a whisper, in the hands of dreamers and pizza lovers and people who just kept mining. And now, you can let it all fade. The white papers, the passwords, the coins and codes. They'll keep running out there in the dark. But you've done enough. You're here, warm, safe, still. No charts, no mining, no mysteries left to solve tonight. Just rest. Close your eyes and let sleep come, soft and steady, like the quiet ticking of the blockchain. Good night.